Hello and welcome to Exceptional Circumstances for Exceptional Learners. I am Rebecca Muller, and I am so excited to be joined tonight with Julie Swanson, also known as the Life Skills Lady. So what is so great about this is that I actually came across Julie through LinkedIn. I saw that she was doing amazing things with life skills, and we connected. And as we started to connect, I realized that not only had I already read her book, but I have it marked up and actually did some research on it for my graduate program. So, a little bit more about Julie. Julie is the parent of a young adult with an autism spectrum disorder and is a special education advocate. Like she's the real deal. Her career as an advocate grew out of her own advocacy efforts for her son. She is the founder of LifeSkillsLady.com, a website devoted to the critical link between life skills and improved outcomes in autism. Julie is also the author of Your Special Education Rights, What Your School District Isn't Telling You, as well as the companion site, YourSpecialEducationRights.com, a video-based site that helps parents understand their rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Act. So as you all come in, I want to let you know that this is a welcoming and collaborative space. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to unmute. I think that the more that we can collaborate, the more that we can navigate, accommodate, and advocate for all students. So I see in the chat that some of you are working with children as well as being parents, and some of you are students with disabilities. So I just appreciate you and being here tonight. So just a few things about Julie's book that if you're not familiar, I'm very excited to announce that we will be having a little giveaway. And so what I loved about it is that the chapter titles are so clear. I know that's like a silly thing, but when you're going through and trying to find research, it's so nice to know exactly what you're going to get, which doesn't that say a lot about an IEP meeting. So what your district, each chapter is broken down into what your district isn't telling you, but more specifically, what you can do about it. And it's very much this idea of collaboration and to have examples of what to write, which I know a lot of times people are not sure. And I think that every educator should read this to understand and to not be afraid when a parent is coming in and trying to understand. And I think the more that we can understand one another, we can get to the core of actually taking care of what the kids need, because it's not about personalities. It's not about the adults. It's about the students that we're talking about. And so without any further ado, Julie, welcome so much to ECEL. I just love speaking with you and seeing all the amazing things that you do. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I am pleased as punch to be here. And, I just want to say that not only did we write the book, Your Special Education Rights, What Your School District Isn't Telling You, for parents, but we also wrote it for educators, because we're really all in this together, right? And so, the IDEA not only protects parents, but also school districts. And so we really did write it to be inclusive of everyone who's involved in this process.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so I see that some of you are continuing to come in. I would love if you could just give us a little bit of background so we know who we are speaking to tonight. And we're going to start off with a little quiz.
Do you want to give the screen to me?
Oh, yep, it should. Did it bounce back? You should be able to.
See. Are we there?
Yep, you are good to go.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. And obviously I am the life skills lady. And let me just give you a little bit of background about why I started the life skills lady. I have been a special education advocate for more than 20 years. I have a young adult son who is on the autism spectrum. My son happens to be nonverbal. He has an intellectual disability. He doesn't read, he doesn't write. In spite of that description, he's a wonderful young man who has a ton of skills. We've worked very hard with him over the years. And as a special education advocate, I represent parents who have children with all disabilities. However, I represent many, many families who have children with autism spectrum disorders. And this information, by the way, is not only applicable to children who have autism spectrum disorders, but any developmental disability. And I found that there was just a paucity of life skills in children's IEPs, especially as they got older toward transition to adulthood. And it's sort of become my mission to make sure that there's an understanding of what are life skills, because they're highly underrated and underestimated in what they are. And then how do we incorporate them into the IEP? So I'd love to, as part of the book giveaway, have everybody take this quiz. And whoever is the winner, and there might be more than one, you will receive a book from me. Your special education rights, what your school district isn't telling you. So let's just get right. Oh boy, I sort of gave that one away. So I think that the answer to that one was revealed. I'm so sorry. So you're all going to get this right. Are adaptive and life skills the same thing? Let's begin with the quiz.
So feel free to write your answer in the chat. If you are comfortable with the reactions, if it's a yes, and give it a thumbs up. Any way that you'd like to communicate.
So again, the question is, are adaptive and life skills the same thing?
We have a couple of yeses.
Okay.
No. 2 yeses, 1 no. Another yes. All right, the suspense is killing me.
Okay, yes, the terms adaptive skills and life skills are often interchanged. So, okay, good for you, those folks who got it correct. Next question.
Can I just ask, why is adaptive used and why are life skills used? Like what's the difference in the vernacular?
The answer to that is going to be revealed in another question.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
But if I don't answer it, you come back to me. And I'm going to answer
fantastic.
Because in answering it, I might give away another question.
Oh, we don't want to do that. No.
Okay. Okay. Life skills are made up of 3 categories: housekeeping, cooking, and hygiene. True or false?
Those are the only life skills.
Mm-hmm.
So you could put true, false, you could do the thumbs up. So I don't know. I think we have our answers here. We're saying false. That's a unanimous false.
And the answer is no. Life skills are so much more, and you'll find out more about life skills on my website. But you know what? I'm not going to make you go to my website right now. I'm going to tell you what they all are. Okay. And by the way, on my website, I have this chart. So I'm going to read to you the categories of life skills. Are you ready? Okay. Communication, functional academics, self-direction, social skills, leisure skills, self-care, home or school living, community use, health and safety, and work.
I feel like those could apply to all students.
Oh, they absolutely do. But here's the difference. When you are dealing with students who are typically developing, right? Some of these skills are learned through just osmosis. We don't have to, you incidentally learn them, right? You learn them because you've been exposed. We can't assume that for students who have autism and other developmental disabilities. Some of them may need to be explicitly taught. Okay, we're ready for the next question.
All right, let's do it. I'm keeping track here.
Okay, so are adaptive and life skills commensurate with intelligence quotient? This is specifically with students who have autism, but I suppose it could also be with other developmental disabilities. Are adaptive and life skills commensurate? Meaning, if you have a high IQ, you're going to be all fine with life skills, or just even a moderate IQ. D, 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 D.
Right? I know. I should have made some sound cues.
Da, 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 da.
You have a great singing voice.
Well, you know what? In a previous lifetime, I was a vocalist, but oh, so many years ago.
Oh, we will have to talk more about that at another time.
Okay, what do we have? We ready to reveal the answer?
Let's do it. We have a lot of no's.
Okay, no. Some people on the autism spectrum have adaptive and life skills that are not commensurate with their intelligence. And as a result, they can be functionally impaired because they are unable to translate their cognitive abilities into efficient adaptive and life skills. And then I have some statistics that, you know, I don't think we really need to go into because that might take a little bit too much time. Okay.
Right now, just to let you know, Vivian and Maddie are in the lead.
All righty. All right. So next question. Because life skills are not academic, public schools are not responsible to teach them.
Oh, that's a good one. I got a big false with an exclamation point. Ellen, you are passionate about this.
Do you want me to reveal the answer?
Let's do it.
False. Teaching children how to function in the world is just as important as teaching academic skills.
And I think there's a lot to be said about that right now with our pandemic education.
Right.
I don't know how many of you saw, but standardized testing still needs to occur as per a ruling from yesterday. And makes me think, are we teaching kids how to function or the academic? What is the goal of education as a writ large thing? And that could be a whole
don't get me
topic.
Going.
Right. But I think that it's important to mention because it's timely and we still, you know, it's not just in the special needs world. All of our kids need to learn how to function, especially through our trauma and everything else. And we do have a few shows coming up in the future to talk about that. So I just felt like I needed to say that, but let's continue with our adaptive versus
excellent. And by the way, I have a great social emotional learning teacher if you ever want to interview her.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Make a note of that. Okay. Do teaching academics take precedent over teaching life skills in public schools?
The reality or philosophically?
Any way you'd like to, well, from the IDEA perspective, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
From legal. You got a lot of falses.
Reveal time?
Let's do it. Kathy's not sure.
I know the IDEA recognizes that both are important. All righty.
I'm not so sure that that translates in practice.
Okay, so one of the fundamental components of an IEP is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, the PLAF, I'm sure you've all heard of that, which summarizes the student's current levels academically and functionally. So all IEP goals flow from these present levels. So there's not supposed to be a weight given, okay? And you are right, no, that does not practice most of the time. Okay, transition means preparation for work.
Got false. So if you're just joining us, feel free to jump in the chat. We're taking a little quiz and we're giving away some books.
Yeah. And I think we have a highly informed crew here.
We do, we
False.
do.
The first stated purpose of the IDEA is to ensure that all students with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education, a FAPE, that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Excellent. Okay, the next question. Life skills cannot be incorporated into the IEP until a student is in high school.
I think that's where we see more of the life skills classes per se on a schedule, but I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of no's in the chat. False, false, no, no. What do you think?
Okay, we have a very smart crew here. False. There is no age or grade requirement when it comes to incorporating adaptive or life skills into the IEP. Okay, this may be, this is a good one. Does the IDEA talk about life skills?
We have some no's, all no's. I honestly, I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure.
No. The IDEA refers to skills beyond academics as functional skills.
So not life skills, but functional skills. So now I'm the semantics part of my brain is really ruminating over the difference between functional, life skills, adaptive skills.
All right, so we're going to go to the next question. Does the IDEA include a definition of functional skills?
Yes, 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 no. Let's see. I don't know.
And the answer is no. In the commentary on the IDEA, it states it is not necessary to include a definition of functional in these regulations because we believe it is a term that is generally understood to refer to skills or activities that are not considered academic or related to a child's academic achievement. Instead, functional is often used in the context of routine activities of everyday living. Functional is recognized to mean non-academic as routine activities of daily living. And to speak to this a little bit further, Rebecca, this is where the unique needs of your child come in. What is functional for your child may be different for another. So there's a great breadth of interpretation here that anything that's non-academic.
My wheels are spinning right now, and I feel like this is where I have my master's. I've read the books, I wrote the papers, and it's still, there's a lot of clouds. There's a lot of things that you think are there because in practice you do it a certain way, but then the language of the law is something else. And
it's left up for interpretation. And here's the thing, it's generally, functional skills are generally known to be those skills that we need for every day-to-day living. Think about that.
That's huge.
We could come up with a million things, right? But I'll give you an example. So many times, I've been on the Connecticut State Transition Task Force for many, many, many years. And the idea, came up recently of transition skills around community use and transportation. But what do we usually think of for community use transportation training? Does a student know how to get on a bus? Well, look at what's happening in today's world. We've got Uber. We've got kids with disabilities who are drivers, right? What are all the soft skills you need around being a driver? What if you get pulled over by a policeman who says, are you on any drugs? Do you know the difference between illicit drugs and drugs that you need to take, perhaps, medications? Are the way that you're going to answer, is that going to perhaps put you at risk for being arrested? There's so many things that if we look to the skills we need for judgment, right? from day-to-day living, it depends on the student. It includes, the risk that you pose to yourself with your online behavior. Think of social media today.
Oh, every child needs that right now.
Right. But ask me how many students with whom I've worked and their parents have been arrested. And guess what? Once you're past 18, the system doesn't care that you have a disability. So you better have some skills that are going to keep you protected, right? So don't let me going. I could go on and on and on. So functional just means, what are the skills that you need to have to, function from day to day in our world?
And the world is an ever-changing place, which makes this even more complicated.
Which makes transition programming for adulthood just that more important and challenging. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Is it ever too early to incorporate adaptive and life skills in the IEP?
I feel like we kind of mentioned this one. I think the sooner the better, personally.
Absolutely not. And the next question is, did I get a passing score? And there is no score on this, because I have deemed that if I have raised your awareness and your just ability to understand these answers, I consider you a winner.
Wow, so we had some tight competition in this chat here. I'm thinking that, first of all, some of you came in late, so that's nothing against you. But I would love to see Vivian and Maddie. How does that sound? So if you could, how do you want to do this? And should they reach out?
I just need their addresses, and so they can send that to you privately, and you can provide those to me, and I will get out a copy of your special education rights, what your school district isn't telling you.
That's awesome. And also, please feel free to reach out if there are, if there's anything else that maybe you think of after tonight. This is the start of a conversation. So just know that this is a connection now that you have, and you can continue. So congratulations. Yay. I need to have like sound effects next time. Yay.
So I don't know what y'all want to talk about next. I can talk to you about how to incorporate life skills into the IEP. I can take questions and answers. Where we go from here, totally up to the group.
All right. So feel free to either unmute or write your question in the chat. I know that anytime you sign up for things, you have some idea of what you're looking to get from tonight. So please, please, please. All right. How does an IEP transition goal look like? So what does that goal look like?
Well, that's an excellent question. So an IEP, well, you know what? I'm going to go to my PowerPoint. Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to go to, where do I have this? Present levels. Where do I have this? Bear with me. Present levels. Oh, Julie. Oh boy, where do I have that? Okay. Here's what here we go. So again, I want to just say, this is our Connecticut IEP form. Present levels of academic achievement and functional performance are different in every single state, right? But if you look at this right here, you'll see that there are sections of the suspected areas of disability that we have to look at, right? And, behavioral, social, emotional, communication, health and development, fine and gross motor, academic. And we want to make sure that when we're in transition, we continue to look at all these needs. But this is where, to answer your question, and again, please understand, this is the Connecticut form. And in Connecticut, we have this is our transition planning page in Connecticut. And I want to go over 5A, B, and C right here for you, okay? And so the three areas that you have to have IEP goals and objectives for transition is in employment, independent living, and post-secondary education. So school or any kind of training beyond high school, employment, and independent living. And when we think of what transition is, it is the activities and the movement toward those post-school outcome goal statements. In other words, after I graduate, where am I landing to be prepared for post-secondary education? After I graduate, where am I landing for my readiness for employment? After I graduate, where am I landing with skills for independent living? So the IEP goals and objectives for transition must flow under these three categories, and they shouldn't be written any differently than regular IEP goals. And what do I mean by that? In that they are SMART IEP goals. I believe I have, do I have a SMART thing here? Well, I think we all know what SMART is. It's SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right? We need to know here's my general rule for transition goal, for any kind of goal. And so my answer to your question is they're written just like any other goal. What is the skill that I am observing when you first write that goal? And how do I know they've achieved that goal by observing it in a year's time? Is there a baseline that I need to establish? How am I measuring it? How will I know that it's accomplished? So please, I know so many of you must know this, but SMART, look up SMART IEP goals. There's 1,000, searches that come up. But goals need to be written in using that SMART acronym. And so I hope I've answered your question.
So we have another one here. How can
Okay.
a life skill be added into an IEP when it is not a skill that is easily completed at school, such as taking a bus or washing clothes, etc.?
Such an excellent question. I'm going to tackle the first one first. Do I want to get rid of this in the background?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll stop sharing. Okay. This is such an excellent question, and I'm glad that you asked the first question being about transportation. So what I need you to know about transportation is, I'm sure you've all heard of related services. Your related services outside of direct special education services are your OT, your speech, your PT, your counseling, parent training. Well, guess what another related service is? Transportation. So regardless of whether or not you're a student who's in transition age, right? Transportation is a related service. So there can always be an IEP goal written if it involves behavior on the bus or anything as social skills on the bus. So IEP goals can absolutely be written for transportation. What was the second part? Remind me again.
Like another skill that's not easily completed at school. So like,
okay.
So
look, this is another really wonderful answer. Okay. School districts may have an argument, a better argument, that before you reach transition age, which federally you must have transition in place by the 16th birthday, check your own states. Here in Connecticut, we just passed legislation a couple of years ago that students who have autism must have transition in place by 14. And we know that our state, had our legislature been open this year, probably was going to make sure that all students have transition started at 14. And we already have quite a trend within our state that they're starting transition at 14, but do check your state, but federally it's 16. By the time you have transition goals, the argument that, oh my gosh, we don't see that at school, no longer floats. Transition is a process that helps the student be prepared, if appropriate, for independent living, post-secondary education, and employment. You can't master all of those skills within the school setting and say, oh, well, we're just going to assume that that translates to generalization beyond the schoolhouse doors. So the argument from a legal perspective can absolutely be that we need to have a plan in place where we are somehow, through parent training or other outside supports or school folks that go outside of the school district, are making sure that that skill generalizes to other settings.
Absolutely. We have another question here. How often do you modify IEP goals for someone who is high functioning?
All right, well, I'm going to give you the legal answer, okay? Because it doesn't matter whether they're high functioning or, and by the way, that's not a term I'm in love with, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. The law says, right, that we must have at least one, well, it doesn't actually say this, but you have to have at least one IEP a year because it's called an annual review. You design goals and objectives for 1 year's time, and then you can see how that child does. You have to have that annual review. You could have 45 IEP meetings a year. Would I ever suggest that? Absolutely not. But there's no limit on how many IEPs you can have during the year. There's no limit on how you can modify a goal. But of course, common sense prevails on this one, right? But the very specific question you asked me is for high functioning. And if we're just talking about autism, I just put on my Facebook page, which I welcome you to all follow. I have tons of content on it. On Facebook, it's Life Skills Lady. If you go on Facebook and just search Life Skills Lady, that's my Facebook page. And I just put a post on last night, as a matter of fact, that says high functioning autism is not easy autism, right? It goes back to that sort of myth that many students who have autism, who have higher IQs, that they don't require as many life skills or adaptive skill supports. And we never want to assume that. That may be, right? But we never want to assume that. So you want to make sure that you're doing your adaptive skill measures, the Vineland, the ABAS, the AFLs, the Assessment of Functional Living Skills, to make sure that those adaptive skills, what are the adaptive living skills? So the question is, how often do you have to come together for someone who has high functioning autism? As often as you think you need to make changes to the IEP, which would be no different from somebody who doesn't have high functioning autism or any other disability.
So I need to go back to that original. So we've talked about adaptive, we've talked about life skills. What I feel like I'm still like, why is there this perception that they are different?
There are many ways that people refer to the skills we need to be adaptive in day-to-day life. And they are just simply, I don't want you to overthink it. It's because there are many different ways to describe it.
Okay.
Right. But there's so much overlapping, right? They're simply just referred to as different things. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go, if you could give me back to screen share for a moment.
You have it. And just so you know, okay. Yep, there's one, the assessments that you just rattled off.
Hold on. There's something I want
we could, someone in the chat wants to know them a little bit more specifically.
What do I say here? Hold on. Hold on. Where do I have this? Oh, Julie, come on now. Is it home? Let's see. Is it home?
And if you haven't checked this out, I mean, it's a wealth of information, and it's not this, I feel like sometimes people like to hide things. Everything that she's sharing is completely transparent because it's with the idea that, we need to know, and we need to know how to take care of our students and our children.
Okay, here it is. I found it. Thank you, Rebecca. Right here, life skills, activities of daily living, functional skills, adaptive skills, or adaptive behavior. It can get confusing that all of these terms are used to describe the skills we need for everyday living. So, is there a fine line sometimes between somebody saying adaptive skills and life skills? I suppose, but at the end of the day, there are any of those skills that are not academic skills. And people simply refer to them as different types of skills. And, since we're on this page, they're basically into three categories, right? We've got conceptual, which are maybe the most demanding skills for some people with autism, because these require applying insights into a situation, right? So you're reading numbers, money, time, and communication skills. We've got our social skills, which is understanding and following social rules and customs, obeying laws, and detecting motivations of others to avoid victimization and deception. And practical, which are the skills needed to perform the activities of daily living, including feeding, bathing, dressing, occupational, and navigational skills. So within these three categories, we've got they're broken down in further into domains.
So with that in mind, these are sometimes hard to observe and assess. So Mary asks, what are your recommendations for observing and keeping the data on these skills? Like, is it sufficient just to ask parents?
No. So that's a great question. So I've gone to my tab on the website called assessments. And see, it all starts with assessments. If we're thinking about the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, how do we gather that information? Through assessments. Some assessments are standardized, some are not standardized. It can be through observation, it can be through interview. But there are some assessments that are sort of, you can, whether or not, they're in a book, okay? And so we've got the ABLES, which is the assessment of basic language and learning skills. We've got, and I'm just going to jump to this one, the AFLs, which is the sort of more advanced version of the ABLES, which is the assessment of functional living skills. There's the Vineland, which is the Vineland adaptive behavior scales. There is the ABUS, which is the adaptive behavior assessment system. And those four are sort of the cornerstones, if you will. I'm not saying that there aren't others, that you conduct to establish that baseline. Where's the beginning point, right? Now, one of the lovely things about the AFLs and the ABLES is, if any of you are familiar with those, imagine that you've got all these domains, these sections of functioning, hygiene, leisure skills, right? And every single domain is represented by a column. And within the column, there are rows. And within the rows, there are boxes. And every box represents a skill. And so when you first observe it or evaluate it, you get to color in the box in a color. Does the child have the skill? Yes or no? Yes, we're going to color it in. No, we don't color it in. Now you're going to do that assessment 6 months later, and you get to color it in with a new color. So the first one was red, the second was in green. Over time, the next 6 months blue, the next 6 months yellow. Over time, you get to see growth through the colors, but each box has a corresponding IEP goal that goes with it. That's the wonderful thing about those two assessments. So those assessments track the progress. It's innate in those assessments.
So two questions regarding assessments. Are these all normed? Are these normed assessments was a question.
Well, these assessments are a yes or no.
Okay.
You either have them or you don't. Does that
Got
answer your question?
Um, yes. And
Okay.
then, so Ellen also asks, are schools the only ones who can do these assessments? And additionally, I want to ask, if you know that this is the right assessment for your child and the school says they don't have that assessment,
Oh,
what can you do?
such a great question. And as we all know, many school districts haven't invested in some assessments, right? Oh, this is a big question. Okay, what was the first part? God, I forgot the
So,
first part.
um,
It's been a long
are
day. I'm sorry.
are schools the only one who can
Oh,
do these assessments?
no. So, and again, again, I'm going to start off the conversation that we're just talking about autism for a minute, but can we expand that? Yes, but I'm answering as it for children who have autism. Many students who have autism, their parents are fortunate enough to have insurance that could pay for ABA or autism services, applied behavior analytic services, or autism services, speech, OTPT, as part of their insurance covers that. Those folks can also do these assessments. If you were to go to an independent evaluator outside of the school district's evaluator, the school district's staff, they can do these assessments. So the short answer is no. There are other folks who can do them. Second part was,
What if you know that a certain assessment would be
oh,
good for your child and the school says they don't have it?
well, this is where it gets a little tricky. So, under the IDEA, one of the rights that parents have that I think is among one of their most important rights, right, is their ability to disagree with an evaluation that the district conducts and request an independent evaluation if they disagree with the district's evaluation. And certainly, that's always a right that a parent has. But on a practical matter, if there's something that you want the school district to conduct and they don't have it, you can either say, would you purchase it? Or, and I know other states must have this, here in Connecticut, we have an organization that's a function of the state called SERC, Special Education. Well, they changed the name of it. Special Education
Resource
something.
center?
Thank you, Special Education Resource Center.
Okay.
And every state should have some version of this because there are federal funds, right, that go to states to support special education advocacy. But check your state's library. I know here at CERC, there are evaluations that, just like a library, get taken out on loan. So if a school district doesn't own it, they can perhaps borrow it from another district or their CERC like library, like we have here in Connecticut, or you simply ask the district to purchase it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know how many people actually know that going into it. I know just some of my own experiences. You come at it with the idea that the school district has your best interest in mind, right? That's if you're coming from a very colored glasses.
Right,
And I
that's the
think
best way to
that
put it.
when you get that parent kind of gut feeling, sometimes you don't want to rock the boat, because they're taking care
Right,
of your child and you don't
right,
want to upset them. But if you know that there's
right,
something more or something else, it should be that team approach. And
right,
then I know there is another question specific to a person's child, but just as we're kind of in the stream of
right.
consciousness, like when is it appropriate to get an advocate? I think that's a really big question because I think there's a
That's a
lot of
great
tension,
question.
because I think that sometimes parents might not want to take that route, not just for
Right.
financial reasons, but they don't want to upset the people that are taking care of their child.
Well, look, I've been doing this for more than 20 years. And if I had a nickel for every time a parent came to me and said, well, I'm really afraid to hire an advocate because it may show the district that I'm trying to get adversarial with them, and will they retaliate against my child? Look, these are legitimate concerns, right? But that shouldn't be something that you fear, because that should never, ever happen, ever, ever, ever. The IDEA is very clear that parents can bring advocates to the table, your sister, your brother, a gorilla, anybody you'd like to help support you. So it should never be something you fear to bring an advocate aboard. I find that some parents don't even know what an advocate is. Some parents don't even know that there's something called a special education attorney who can represent you. Here's the way that I like to put it. When what you don't know can hurt you, right? And it's one of the reasons that we wrote the book, Your Special Education Rights, What Your School District Isn't Telling You. You have to know the basics of the law if you're a parent. I feel very strongly about that. I'm a parent. I had to learn it. If I didn't, I might put myself at risk to have the wool pulled over my eyes. And I don't mean to seem pessimistic about school districts. It's not my intent. I'm a big fan of public school districts. But just like anything we do in life, right? We need to be our own advocates. We need to be our health advocates. We need to be our literacy, our financial health advocates. We need to be advocates for in everything that we do, right? And do I expect a parent to become have the knowledge that I do after 20 years of advocating? Absolutely not. But I would like all parents to have some baseline floor understanding, right? And there's another website I will send you to, and it's the companion site to Your Special Education Rights. It's called yourspecialeducationrights.com. And that's a video-based website that helps parents understand their rights under the IDEA. You should not be dissuaded from bringing in an advocate. Advocates are there to help you where your knowledge base stops. Okay. My whole role is to get involved so I can secure a free, appropriate public education for your child, and at the same time educate you, because my role is I want you to not need me. I want you to learn from me, but I want to come in and teach you while I'm helping you how to do this on your own. And let's face it, most parents don't have time to read through the entire IDEA to figure out how this law works. It's why do I hire an accountant to do my taxes? Why do I hire an attorney to help me if I'm going to sell my home? Because I'm not proficient at this. I don't spend my whole life knowing what I'm supposed to do. It's the same thing for why you might require and need and benefit from a special education advocate.
I also think that it's important to say that even as a special education teacher, it's what I have my master's in, it's what I read about. When it's about your own kid, there's just something that
Right,
happens that your emotions get in
right,
the way, your anxiety goes
right.
up, and having that extra person
Sure.
to kind of help you. And the other thing that I want to bring up is that it's easier now than ever because most of the IEP meetings that I've been a part of this year have had to be remote,
Oh yeah, I
which
love
means
it.
people don't have to take a full day off
I love it.
from work. It is making the accessibility so much greater. And what's wonderful is that in my tutoring company, I have kids in California,
Right,
Texas, Indiana, and I get to be a part of their meetings.
right.
And what's wonderful is that you're not limited
Right,
to the professionals in your immediate surroundings. You can reach out and really find that person that clicks with your kid.
right.
And that's just
Ready to
such
come
an
out?
empowering thing.
Come on.
You know, I love Zoom or Google Meets IEP team meetings because I really think it evens the playing field. We're all, you're not sitting as, the two people, whether you're a single parent or both parents come in around a sea of educators on their turf at their table, where they've probably had a meeting before the IEPT meeting to discuss what was going to happen. And I think it's just a more equitable approach
I do agree.
for
Yeah.
everyone. And I'm certainly hoping, and along with a whole bunch of other advocates and special ed attorneys, I know that it's here to stay.
I really hope so. We have a question from Ayana. At my son's IEP meeting, no outside transition agency was invited. Was it because of his age, which was only 15?
Yes. Yes. So depending on the state that you live in, okay, and so here in Connecticut, right, you are forced to exit out of special education. It was at 21, or when you turn 21 during the school year, you get to go to the end of that school year. We recently had a lawsuit, believe it or not, here in Connecticut that was a claim over if you are in adult education, which goes to 22, right? Why are we holding special ed students to the standard that they can only go to school till 21? So we had a ruling here in Connecticut that you now can get exited from special education on your 22nd birthday, but check your state. So I want you to think of it this way. When the agency gets involved, and that is if the student also has an intellectual disability, right? You have to have below 69, well, at least in Connecticut, that's what it is, IQ and low adaptive skills. That agency, which here in Connecticut is called DDS, the Department of Developmental Services, or the Department of Social Services, it's like passing the baton. We're saying, okay, we're going from IEP to the adult world. Well, they're not going to come in at 15. They're going to come in probably a year before you're ready to go. Okay, we're ready to pass it to this new agency that's going to financially take over the cost and services for this young individual. Can you ask that person to come earlier? Sure. You know, all they can say is no, but perhaps they'll say yes.
Awesome. So this is a question directly to you, Julie. Was your son involved in his IEP meetings? And if so, how?
Excellent question. I would have loved nothing more for my son to be involved. And as skilled and wonderful as he is, okay, it was a little too, those meetings are a little too highfalutin for him. And so he doesn't read, he doesn't write, he doesn't speak, okay? While I think there's lots of things he understands, there's lots of things he doesn't understand. And so the nature of what you're talking about at a PPT would not really be something that we think he would understand. And so I am his legal plenary guardian, which means I have 100% authority to make decisions for him in every way, medically, educationally. Now, listen, would I love it if I didn't have to be my son's 100% plenary guardian and that I could say to him, Alex, is there anything that you would like to do? Tell me. I'd be thrilled if that were the case. You know, I know there are some folks who are advocates for students who have disabilities, and they say you should never be 100% guardian for your child. Gee, I agree if they have the skills where they could participate. Unfortunately, my son does not.
If you follow Julie on Facebook, the pictures that she shares of Alex and their new dog, Max, right?
Yep, Max the Menace.
Oh my gosh, it is just such a joy to see, you know, it's living proof. It's the day-to-day, you know, it clearly, all of your work comes from such a strong place of passion and love. And I know you give
And
such great support
experience.
An experience, right? And that's
Right.
the best teacher,
Right.
right?
Right. And as we know, autism is a spectrum disorder, right? And my son Alex happens to be um very severely impacted by his autism, right? But in spite of that, right, he's a life skills kid, and he was never able to be on the academic track. That was okay. So he was a life skills kid, and I'd like to think that we so focused on his life skills that now that he's an adult, right, and I have a self-directed program for him, and here in Connecticut, that means that he doesn't go to a program. I created it. And so certainly not during the pandemic, but we're looking forward to getting back to it soon. With support, he goes to a farm around the corner from our house where he changes the water out for horses every day. And he does that with support. He's there for about 4 hours. It's fabulous because he's around animals. He's got a lot of heavy lifting, proprioceptive feedback. He's involved with other people, people who care for him greatly. And he's productive, and he's engaged in meaningful work that means something to him, and he can take pride in it, and it's purposeful. In the afternoon, he comes home, he eats, he helps supported, to make his lunch. And then he does a lot of chores around the house, which he loves. And again, it's purposeful, it's meaningful. He is busy from the moment he gets up to the moment he goes to sleep. He has a whole routine. After the day is done, obviously, just like everyone else, he bathes, he eats dinner, then he watches a movie. He's a big Disney fan. He watches a movie every night, just like we all do, right? We get up, we get dressed, we have some purpose, whatever that purpose is, it doesn't matter. For him, it is to be involved in meaningfully engaged activities throughout the day. And he's a happy guy. He gets exercise. He does a lot of leisure activities. And that's happiness to me and my husband, because we know he has a meaningful life for him.
And he's
My,
functioning at that.
he,
That's
he is
and
functioning.
he's thriving, and
He is.
that's
And I'll tell you what,
wonderful.
this dog has been so great for him. Just,
Animals are fabulous.
yeah,
Just to be like, I really had chills like thinking about the farm, and just that, like, very much being a part of that community is
yeah,
so wonderful. And not
yeah,
to mention, you said the heavy
right,
lifting. That is huge.
right,
I know, just in the
right,
classroom, and having kids just carry books like, hey, could you bring this down the hallway to,
right,
Miss Smith,
right,
and giving them those
right,
chances. Well,
right.
just to be aware of time, I know that there are still some questions in the chat. I am just going to stop recording, but feel
Okay.
free to stick around to continue to ask specific questions. I also wanted to point out that Julie will be back, and with the SEEK group, which, remind me what the acronym stands for.
So that stands for Special Education Equity for Kids of Connecticut. And we are an organization that lobbies at the Capitol in Hartford, and are the very first legislation that we got passed as a group. We represent parents of the 80,000 plus students who have special education needs here in Connecticut. And our very first legislation that we passed was a anti-retaliation bill for teachers, which prohibits teachers getting retaliated against for advocating for a student at an IEP team.
And I cannot wait to hear so much more about that, to bring that to other states. So she will be back. That is on March 24th. It is, in fact, fantastic. They also have a Facebook page, and I think, are you doing that monthly now? The conversation.
So it is fascinating. When the pandemic came about, we had really no Facebook presence at all, kind of like you, Rebecca, right? And we reacted to the crisis that was in front of us, and we started doing live Facebook shows to keep parents abreast of all the guidelines that were coming down in Connecticut. And we started a live Facebook show called Seek This Week. And we literally every week for 9 to 10 months went on live every week. And now that things are calming down a bit, it's, we're all volunteers. It gets a little hard to sustain Seek This Week. So we've turned it into Seek This Month. And
not the quite not the same rhyme scheme, but
no, it doesn't rhyme, but as volunteers to it's a lot to keep up. You're doing weekly shows and it comes from passion. However, at some point, because we're no longer reacting to the crisis that it was, we're going to
which is
stretch
a good
it out.
thing. We should all be grateful, but the connections and the information continue, and that's just a wonderful thing. So I'm excited to have you back. I am just so grateful for you offering your time during IEP season. I can imagine that it's been quite a busy day. So I thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you back and to consider you a part of the ECEL family. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everyone have a wonderful night.
Good night.